My name is Rebecca, and this is the story of how I discovered my fiancé's betrayal and turned my wedding into his worst nightmare. 3 weeks before what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, I found a package on my doorstep in our quiet neighborhood in Portland, Oregon. Michael wasn't home yet. He was supposedly at his weekly poker game with the guys. The package had no return address, just my name printed in block letters I didn't recognize. Inside was a tablet and a note. You deserve to know the truth before you say I do. Everything is on here, I'm sorry. My hands trembled as I powered on the device. What I found made my knees buckle. Videos. Dozens of them. All from Michael's bachelor party in Las Vegas 2 weeks ago. The party I'd helped plan, trusting my maid of honor Sarah to coordinate with the guys while I stayed home for my own bachelorette celebration. The first video showed Michael at a strip club, but that wasn't what destroyed me. It was seeing him with multiple women, acting completely single. His wedding ring was in his pocket. When women asked if he was married, he laughed and said he was free as a bird. But the worst was yet to come. In video after video, I watched my fiancé of 3 years systematically lie to woman after woman. He told them elaborate stories about being recently divorced, about starting fresh, about looking for the one. He gave out fake business cards with a different name. He even wore a fake wedding ring on his right hand, claiming it belonged to his deceased father to generate sympathy. The video showed him taking multiple women back to his hotel room over the course of 3 nights. Not just meaningless hookups. He was exchanging numbers, making plans to visit them in Vegas, promising relationships he had no intention of honoring. Then I saw the group chat messages between him and his groomsmen, all displayed on the tablet. Screenshots of conversations that made my blood run cold. Rebecca has no idea how wild this week is going to be, Michael had written. What happens in Vegas, right? His best man Tyler had responded, just don't get caught, bro. 2 more weeks and you'll be locked down forever. That's why I'm getting it all out of my system now, Michael replied. Marriage is just a piece of paper anyway. Rebecca's sweet, but she's not exactly adventurous. This might be my last chance to have real fun. The messages continued for pages, Michael describing his encounters in graphic detail, his friends encouraging him, everyone treating my upcoming marriage like a joke. They made bets about whether he'd cheat after the wedding. They shared photos and videos of his conquests like trophies. But what shattered me completely was discovering that this wasn't new behavior. The tablet contained evidence going back 18 months. Hotel receipts, restaurant bills for 2 when he claimed to be traveling alone for work, dating app conversations, photos with other women. My fiancé had been living a double life our entire engagement, using business trips as opportunities to meet women in different cities. There were women in Seattle, Denver, San Francisco, Chicago. He had ongoing relationships with at least 6 different women, all of whom believed they were dating a single, successful architect named Mark, who traveled frequently for work. I sat on our living room floor, surrounded by the evidence of Michael's systematic deception, and felt something cold and calculating settle in my chest. He thought I was naive, sweet, boring. He thought marriage was just a piece of paper that wouldn't change anything. He was about to learn exactly how wrong he was. Instead of confronting him or canceling the wedding, I began planning the most elaborate revenge in matrimonial history. Michael wanted to play games? I'd give him a game he'd never forget. My first call was to Elite Event Productions. I need to add a special multimedia presentation to my wedding ceremony, I told them. Something that will surprise my fiancé and really wow our guests. They were thrilled to help. Within 2 days, they'd installed a massive projection system in the Sentinel Hotel's ballroom, complete with professional sound and lighting. The screen would be visible to all 150 guests, positioned right behind where we'd exchange vows. My second call was to my cousin James, who worked in film production. I need help editing some footage for a wedding surprise, I told him. When I showed him what I had, he was speechless. Rebecca, are you sure about this? This is going to destroy him. Good, I replied. Help me make it devastatingly clear. James created a masterpiece, a 20-minute presentation that told the story of Michael's double life in chronological order. He included the dating app conversations, the hotel footage, the group chat messages, and testimony from 3 of the women Michael had deceived who had agreed to participate once they learned the truth. The presentation was professional, undeniable, and absolutely damning. Meanwhile, I continued wedding preparations as if nothing had changed. I smiled through dress fittings, finalized catering details, and played the excited bride to perfection. Michael remained completely oblivious, continuing his patterns of deception right up until our wedding day. 3 days before the ceremony, he claimed he needed to fly to San Francisco for a last-minute client emergency. I smiled and wished him well, then used the tracking app on his phone, which he'd forgotten I had access to confirm he was actually meeting his long-term girlfriend there, a woman named Amanda who worked in tech and believed she was dating her future husband. On our wedding morning, I woke up feeling calmer than I had in weeks. By evening, everyone would know exactly who Michael really was. The ceremony was beautiful. The Sentinel Hotel's ballroom was decorated in blush and gold, exactly as I'd planned. Our families filled the elegant space, everyone dressed in their finest, cameras ready to capture what they thought would be the beginning of our happily ever after. Michael looked handsome in his charcoal gray tuxedo, standing at the altar with his groomsmen, all of whom had helped cover his tracks for months. His smile was confident, relaxed. He had no idea what was coming. The officiant, Pastor Williams, began with traditional words about love, commitment, and honesty in marriage. I caught James's eye in the back of the room, where he was manning the presentation equipment. When it came time for vows, Michael went first. He'd written his own, delivering them with practiced sincerity. "Rebecca," he began, "3 years ago, you changed my life. You made me want to be a better man, to build something real and lasting." Several guests dabbed their eyes. His mother was beaming with pride. "I promise to be faithful to you, to honor our commitment, and to always be honest about who I am and what I'm feeling," he continued. "You are my best friend, my greatest love, and my future." The irony was breathtaking. Every word was a lie, delivered with perfect conviction to a room full of people who believed in him completely. "I cannot wait to start our married life together," he concluded, "to build a home filled with trust, laughter, and love." Soft applause filled the room. Michael reached for my hands, his eyes bright with what looked like genuine emotion. "Beautiful words, Michael," Pastor Williams said. "Now, before Rebecca shares her vows, she's prepared a special presentation to honor your relationship." Michael's eyebrows lifted in delighted surprise. "A surprise?" he whispered, grinning like a child on Christmas morning. "Yes," I said clearly, my voice carrying through the microphone. "Something I think everyone should see before I make my promises." I turned to address our guests directly. "Thank you all for being here to witness what I thought would be the beginning of Michael and my life together. Before I pledge my future to him, there's something you all need to know about the man I was about to marry." The atmosphere shifted subtly. Michael's smile faltered slightly, and I saw confusion creep into his expression. I nodded toward James, who activated the presentation system. "Michael, you promised to always be honest about who you are," I said, my voice steady and clear. "Let me show everyone exactly who that is." The massive screen behind us flickered to life, displaying the title slide, "The Double Life of Michael Thompson, a 3-year investigation." The reaction was immediate. Gasps echoed through the ballroom as the first images appeared. Michael at the Vegas strip club, his wedding ring conspicuously absent, surrounded by women who clearly weren't me. Michael's face went completely white. "Rebecca, what is this?" he stammered, but his voice was barely audible over the shocked murmurs of our guests. The presentation continued with devastating precision. James had organized everything chronologically, showing how Michael's deception had evolved and escalated over time. Hotel receipts, restaurant bills, dating app screenshots, photos with other women, all displayed in crystal clear high definition for everyone to see. Then came the audio. Michael's voice filled the ballroom through the professional sound system, recorded during his Vegas bachelor party. "Rebecca has no idea how wild this week is going to be. Marriage is just a piece of paper anyway. She's sweet, but she's not exactly adventurous." The reaction was explosive. Michael's mother stood up so fast, she knocked over her chair. "Michael Thompson, what is the meaning of this?" she demanded, her voice shaking with fury. His father, a respected judge who had performed marriages for 30 years, remained seated but looked like he'd been physically struck. My own family's response was immediate and protective. My father stepped toward the altar, his face dark with rage. "Get away from my daughter," he said quietly, but his voice carried absolute authority. But the presentation wasn't finished. The screen now showed testimonials from 3 of the women Michael had deceived: Amanda from San Francisco, Jessica from Chicago, and Maria from Denver. James had interviewed them via video call, and their stories were heartbreaking. "I thought I was going to marry him," Amanda said on screen, tears streaming down her face. "He told me he was finalizing his divorce, that we'd be together as soon as it was complete. I had no idea he was engaged to someone else." Jessica's testimony was equally damning. "He's been promising to move to Chicago for 6 months. I turned down job offers in other cities because I thought we had a future together." Maria's story was the most disturbing. "He gave me a promise ring, said he was saving up for an engagement ring. I actually believed I was going to be his wife." The ballroom had erupted into chaos. Guests were standing, pointing, shouting questions. Michael's groomsmen were backing away from him as if he had a contagious disease. "This is fake," Michael suddenly shouted, trying to regain control. "This is all fabricated. Rebecca's having some kind of breakdown." I laughed, and the sound was sharp and clear through the microphone. "Fabricated? Let's ask Amanda directly." The screen switched to a live video call. Amanda appeared in real time, sitting in her San Francisco apartment, still wearing the promise ring Michael had given her. "Hello, Michael," she said, her voice steady despite her obvious pain. "Surprised to see me at your wedding?" The silence in the ballroom was deafening. Michael opened and closed his mouth several times, but no sound came out. "Would you like to explain to your bride why you told me you loved me 3 days ago?" Amanda continued. "Or why you promised to move to San Francisco after your business obligations in Portland were finished?" Michael's best man, Tyler, tried to intervene. "This is ridiculous. Michael, we should just leave." "Tyler," I said, turning to face him directly, "would you like to explain to everyone how you helped coordinate Michael's hotel reservations? How you provided alibis when he was with other women? How you placed bets on whether he'd continue cheating after our wedding?" Tyler's face went ashen. The group chat messages were now scrolling across the screen, showing months of conversations between Michael and his groomsmen. Every crude joke, every detailed account of his conquests, every dismissive comment about me was there for everyone to read. Michael's mother was crying now, loud sobs that echoed through the ballroom. "How could you do this?" she wailed. "How could you embarrass our family like this? How could you hurt this sweet girl?" "Mom, please," Michael started, but she cut him off with a gesture of disgust. "Don't you dare call me Mom," she snapped. "I raised you better than this. I raised you to be a man of honor, and you've become a lying, cheating disgrace." His father finally spoke, his voice heavy with disappointment. "Michael, you are no longer welcome in our home. You've brought shame to our family name and dishonored everything we taught you about commitment and integrity." The social and professional implications were immediate. Michael's boss, who was seated in the third row, stood up and walked out without a word. Several clients who had been invited followed suit. His reputation in Portland's tight-knit architectural community was being destroyed in real time. But I wasn't finished yet. "There's one more thing everyone should know," I said, my voice cutting through the chaos. "Michael, tell everyone about the joint bank account you opened in Vegas, the one you've been using to fund your double life." Michael's last remaining color drained from his face. "How did you?" $47,000, I continued. "That's how much you've spent in the last 18 months on hotels, flights, dinners, and gifts for other women. Money you claimed was going toward our future home." The gasps from both families were audible. We'd been saving for a house, and everyone knew how important that goal was to us. Learning that Michael had been stealing from our shared future to fund his infidelity added a new dimension to his betrayal. "You stole from us?" my mother said, her voice shaking with rage. "You stole from our daughter and spent it on other women." Michael made one last desperate attempt to salvage the situation. "Rebecca, please. We can work through this. I love you. Everything else was just confusion. Cold feet. It didn't mean anything." I looked at him with something approaching pity. "Michael, you just told Amanda you loved her 3 days ago. You made plans with Jessica for next month. You promised Maria you'd spend Christmas with her family. Which one of us are you lying to now?" The screen switched to display a calendar showing Michael's upcoming commitments to various women. Weekend trips, holiday plans, anniversary celebrations, all scheduled for after our wedding date. He hadn't planned to end any of his relationships. He'd planned to continue all of them while married to me. Pastor Williams, who had remained silent throughout the revelation, finally spoke. "I cannot and will not perform this ceremony. Marriage is a sacred covenant built on trust and honesty, neither of which is present here." Michael's humiliation was complete, but the consequences were just beginning. His phone had been buzzing constantly throughout the presentation. When he finally checked it, his face went even whiter. "My boss fired me," he said numbly, via text message, at my own wedding. Within hours, videos of the presentation were circulating on social media. Portland's architectural community was small and tight-knit, and news of Michael's deception spread like wildfire. By the next morning, 3 more clients had terminated their contracts. Michael's landlord, who had been a guest at the wedding, served him with eviction papers on Monday. His gym canceled his membership. His country club revoked his privileges. The systematic ostracism was swift and thorough. But perhaps the most devastating consequence was the legal action that followed. Amanda, Jessica, and Maria all filed civil suits against Michael for fraud and emotional distress. The evidence from my presentation made their cases ironclad. 2 weeks after the wedding, Michael's mother called me. "Rebecca, I owe you an apology. I'm so sorry you had to discover his true nature this way, but I'm grateful you did before it was too late." She told me that Michael had been living in his car since being evicted, unable to afford rent without his job. His father had refused all contact, and his siblings had blocked his phone number. "He's lost everything," she said sadly. "His career, his home, his family, his friends. I've never seen consequences so swift and complete." 3 months later, I learned that Michael had moved to working as a night security guard under his middle name. His professional reputation was unsalvageable. His personal relationships destroyed, his financial situation dire. Meanwhile, my life had transformed in ways I never expected. The courage I'd found in planning my revelation had awakened something powerful in me. I left my corporate job and started a consulting business, helping people investigate potential partners before marriage. The video of my wedding presentation had gone viral, inspiring other women to trust their instincts and demand honesty from their partners. I received hundreds of messages from people thanking me for showing them it was possible to stand up for themselves. 6 months after the wedding, that wasn't. I met David at a coffee shop where I was working on my laptop. He approached me hesitantly, asking if I was the woman from the wedding video. "I wanted to thank you," he said. "Your story made me examine my own behavior in relationships. I realized I'd been dishonest with women I was dating, and I've made changes to become someone I can actually be proud of." David's honesty and self-reflection intrigued me. We started talking, then dating, then building something real together. A relationship based on complete transparency, mutual respect, and shared values. When David proposed a year later, it was in the same ballroom where I'd exposed Michael's lies. But this time, the space was filled with truth, love, and genuine commitment. Our wedding was everything my first attempt should have been. Honest, joyful, and surrounded by people who truly supported our union. No secrets, no lies, no hidden agendas. Just two people who had chosen to build a life together with eyes wide open. As for Michael, I heard through mutual acquaintances that he was still working security, still alone, still dealing with the consequences of his choices. The women he deceived had moved on to healthier relationships, armed with the knowledge that they deserved better. Perfect revenge, I learned, isn't just about destroying someone who wronged you. It's about transforming that experience into something that makes you stronger, wiser, and more aligned with your true values. Michael thought he could play games with people's hearts and faces, no consequences. He thought I was too naive and trusting to ever discover his deception. He thought marriage was just a piece of paper that wouldn't change his behavior. He was wrong about everything. The wedding video that exposed his lies became a symbol of empowerment for people around the world. Michael's 15 minutes of fame cost him everything he thought mattered, while giving me a platform to help others avoid similar betrayals. Sometimes the most powerful revenge is simply letting someone face the natural consequences of their actions in front of everyone who matters to them. Truth has a way of emerging, and when it does, it changes everything. Michael learned that actions have consequences, lies have expiration dates, and some mistakes follow you forever. I learned that I was stronger than I ever imagined, that truth is always worth fighting for, and that the right person will celebrate your strength rather than try to deceive you. In the end, he lost everything that mattered. I gained everything I never knew I wanted. The anonymous package that started it all? It came from Jessica in Chicago, who had connected with other women Michael was deceiving and realized they had to warn me before it was too late. They'd collaborated to gather evidence, knowing that only irrefutable proof would save me from marrying a man who would never be faithful. Perfect strangers had gone to extraordinary lengths to protect someone they'd never met from a man who had lied to all of them. Their courage saved me from years of deception and betrayal. Sometimes, the people who seem like threats to your happiness turn out to be the guardian angels you never knew you needed. And sometimes the person you trust most in the world turns out to be the one you should have been protecting yourself from all along. Michael's lies created a network of strong women who refused to let his deception continue. In trying to deceive us all, he inadvertently brought us together in a way that ultimately protected everyone involved. That's the thing about living a lie. Eventually, the truth finds a way to surface. And when it does, it has the power to destroy everything you've built on false foundations, while setting free everyone you've trapped with your deception. The wedding video that should have captured the beginning of a marriage instead documented the end of a lie. And sometimes that's exactly what needs to happen for everyone to finally be free. The deeper investigation. What I discovered later made Michael's deception even more sinister than I initially realized. 3 months after the wedding revelation, I received another package. This time, it was from a private investigator named Patricia Morse, who had been hired by one of Michael's victims. "Rebecca," her note read, "what you exposed was just the tip of the iceberg. Michael's deception goes back much further than anyone realized, and there are more victims than you know." The files Patricia included were devastating. Michael hadn't just been cheating during our engagement. He'd been running elaborate long-term cons on women for nearly 5 years. Before me, there was Sarah in Austin, who thought she was married to him in a ceremony that was completely fake. Before Sarah, there was Catherine in Minneapolis, who had given him $30,000 for a business investment that never existed. The pattern was always the same. Michael would target successful, independent women through professional networking events or dating apps. He'd present himself as a successful architect, which was true, who was looking for a serious relationship. He'd move slowly, building trust over months before making any major asks or commitments. With Sarah, he'd convinced her to have a commitment ceremony in a park, officiated by his friend posing as a minister. She believed they were married for 8 months before discovering the truth. With Catherine, he'd presented fake business documents and architectural plans for a development project that needed funding. Patricia's investigation revealed that Michael had stolen over $200,000 from various women over 5 years, not including the emotional damage and lost opportunities his lies had caused. The FBI had opened an investigation into his activities, classifying him as a person of interest in multiple fraud cases. He's what we call a romance scammer, Patricia explained when she called me. But instead of operating online from another country, he was doing it locally with more sophisticated methods. Your wedding video breaking his pattern may have saved dozens of other women from becoming victims. The revelation that I'd unknowingly been part of a much larger criminal enterprise was both horrifying and strangely validating. My instinct that something was fundamentally wrong with Michael had been correct. It was worse than I'd ever imagined. The legal consequences multiply. Within 6 months of my wedding day revelation, Michael was facing criminal charges in 3 states. The evidence I'd gathered for my wedding presentation had become crucial documentation in multiple fraud cases. My cousin James found himself subpoenaed to testify about the video editing process, ensuring the authenticity of the evidence. The women Michael had victimized began connecting through social media, sharing their stories and building cases together. Amanda from San Francisco became an unofficial coordinator, creating a private Facebook group called Michael Thompson Survivors, where victims could share information and support each other. There are at least 12 of us that we know of, Amanda told me during one of our regular phone calls. And probably more who haven't come forward yet. Your wedding video gave all of us the courage to speak up. The group discovered that Michael had used different variations of his name and background story with different women. Sometimes he was Michael Thompson, the architect. Other times he was Mike Thompson, the real estate developer. With one woman, he'd claimed to be Matthew Thompson, a widowed father whose wife had died in a car accident. Each story was carefully crafted to elicit maximum sympathy and trust. He'd researched his targets thoroughly, tailoring his persona to appeal to their specific vulnerabilities and desires. The level of calculation involved was chilling. Sarah from Austin, the woman who thought she'd married him, provided perhaps the most damaging evidence. She'd kept detailed records of their relationship, including photos of their fake wedding ceremony, copies of the fraudulent marriage certificate, and financial records showing money she'd given him for their supposed shared future. I documented everything because I thought we were building a life together, she told me through tears during a video call. I never imagined I was collecting evidence of my own victimization.
The media firestorm intensifies. As news of Michael's extensive criminal activities spread, my wedding video gained renewed attention. What had started as a viral story about wedding revenge had evolved into a documentary about systematic fraud and abuse. Major news networks began reaching out for interviews. 60 Minutes wanted to do a segment on romance scamming. True crime podcasters were requesting access to our story. Netflix had inquired about documentary rights. I found myself in the strange position of being both a victim and a hero in the public narrative. The wedding video had saved not just me, but potentially dozens of future victims by exposing Michael's methods and ending his ability to operate. Dr. Lisa Patterson, a psychologist who specialized in romance scam recovery, explained the broader implications during one of many interviews I gave. Rebecca's story is significant because it shows how these predators operate in plain sight, often targeting educated, successful women who are anything but naive. Michael's downfall came because he underestimated one victim's intelligence and determination. The attention was overwhelming at times, but I felt a responsibility to use my platform to educate others about the warning signs of romance scamming. I began speaking at conferences, working with law enforcement agencies, and consulting with victims advocacy groups. Michael's complete downfall. By the first anniversary of my wedding day revelation, Michael's life had completely imploded. The criminal charges had resulted in a plea deal, 7 years in federal prison for wire fraud, identity theft, and racketeering. The judge had been particularly harsh during sentencing, noting the calculated nature of his crimes and the number of victims involved. Mr. Thompson, Judge Margaret Chen had said during the sentencing hearing, you systematically exploited the basic human desire for love and connection. You weaponized trust and turned it into a tool for financial and emotional abuse. The damage you've caused extends far beyond monetary loss. Michael's assets had been seized to pay restitution to his victims. His architectural license had been permanently revoked. His professional reputation was so thoroughly destroyed that he'd never work in his field again, even after serving his sentence. The psychological evaluation ordered by the court had revealed disturbing insights into Michael's mindset. Dr. Robert Hayes, the forensic psychologist who evaluated him, found evidence of antisocial personality disorder with narcissistic features. Mr. Thompson shows a profound inability to form genuine emotional connections, Dr. Hayes reported. He views other people primarily as sources of supply, whether financial, emotional, or sexual. His relationships are transactional rather than authentic. This diagnosis helped explain the ease with which Michael had deceived so many people for so long. To him, we weren't real people with feelings and futures, we were marks to be exploited. The ripple effects continue. The exposure of Michael's crimes had consequences that extended far beyond his immediate victims. Several of his male friends faced their own reckonings for their complicity in his deceptions. Tyler, his best man, lost his job at a financial services firm when their compliance department learned he'd helped coordinate Michael's fraudulent activities. Even though Tyler hadn't directly participated in the financial crimes, his employer couldn't risk being associated with someone who had aided and abetted fraud. Danny, another groomsman who had provided alibis for Michael's fake business trips, found his security clearance revoked when the background investigation revealed his role in the deception. His career in government contracting was effectively over. The systematic nature of Michael's lies had required a network of enablers, and each of them faced consequences proportional to their involvement. Some lost jobs, others lost relationships, and all of them had to confront the reality that they'd helped a predator victimize innocent women. Building something better. While Michael's world crumbled, mine continued to flourish in ways I never could have imagined. My consulting business had evolved into a full-service agency, helping people conduct thorough background investigations before major life commitments. Verify before you trust had become our motto, and we'd helped hundreds of clients avoid potentially devastating relationships. Our services range from basic background checks to comprehensive investigations that could uncover even sophisticated deceptions like Michael's. David and I had married in a small, intimate ceremony surrounded by the people who truly mattered to us. Our relationship was built on a foundation of radical honesty. We shared everything, hid nothing, and created a partnership that felt genuinely equal and supportive. The irony, David often said, is that Michael's betrayal led you to become someone who could build the kind of relationship you'd always wanted. His worst behavior brought out your best qualities. David was right. The strength I'd discovered in planning my wedding day revelation had continued to grow. I'd learned to trust my instincts, set firm boundaries, and refuse to accept unacceptable behavior from anyone. The ongoing recovery. 2 years after the wedding that wasn't, I remained in contact with many of Michael's other victims. We'd formed an unlikely sisterhood, bonded by our shared experience, and committed to preventing others from suffering similar fates. Amanda had started a nonprofit organization focused on educating people about romance scamming. Sarah had written a book about her experience and become a sought-after speaker on the topic. Catherine had developed a workshop curriculum for financial institutions to help them identify and prevent romance-related fraud. We all turned our pain into purpose, Amanda reflected during one of our monthly video calls. Michael thought he could use us and discard us, but instead we became a force for protecting others. The healing process had been different for each of us, but we'd all found ways to transform our victimization into empowerment. Some had started new careers, others had found healthy relationships, and all of us had developed a deeper understanding of our own strength and resilience. The long-term impact. The wedding video that exposed Michael's lies had been viewed over 10 million times across various platforms. It had spawned dozens of reaction videos, think pieces about modern relationships, and discussions about the importance of thorough communication before marriage. More importantly, it had directly prevented numerous similar situations. I regularly received messages from people who had investigated their partners more thoroughly after seeing my story, often discovering concerning information that led them to end relationships before making major commitments. "Your video saved my life," one woman wrote. I started asking more questions about my boyfriend's business trips and discovered he had a whole other family in another state. I would have married him if I hadn't seen your story. These messages reminded me that the humiliation and pain of discovering Michael's betrayal had ultimately served a greater purpose. By refusing to suffer in silence, by choosing to expose the truth publicly, I'd created a ripple effect that was still protecting people years later. Michael behind bars. Through the Victim Advocacy Program, I occasionally received updates about Michael's life in federal prison. The adjustment had been difficult for someone accustomed to luxury and admiration. Prison didn't offer the lifestyle or ego gratification he'd become addicted to. According to his caseworker, Michael had initially tried to charm fellow inmates and guards with the same techniques he'd used on his victims. But prison populations are generally immune to the kind of manipulation that works on trusting people in the outside world. He's learning that his skill set doesn't translate to this environment. The caseworker told me during one update call. Some inmates have wives and girlfriends on the outside, and they don't appreciate someone who's made a career of deceiving women. Michael had been placed in protective custody twice after conflicts with other prisoners who had learned about his crimes. The very charm and manipulation skills that had allowed him to victimize so many women made him a target in an environment where those qualities were seen as weaknesses. The educational mission. My story had become part of several academic studies on relationship fraud and digital age deception. Psychology professors used the wedding video in their courses on manipulation and gaslighting. Criminal justice programs incorporated it into curricula about white-collar crime and victim advocacy. Dr. Sarah Chen, a researcher at Stanford who studied online fraud, reached out to collaborate on a comprehensive study of romance scamming techniques. Michael's case is particularly valuable because we have such detailed documentation of his methods, she explained. Most romance scams happen entirely online, but Michael's hybrid approach, combining online tactics with in-person relationship building, represents an evolution in these crimes. The research revealed that Michael's techniques were more sophisticated than typical romance scams. He'd combined emotional manipulation with legitimate professional credentials, making his deceptions much harder to detect. His ability to maintain multiple complex relationships simultaneously required a level of organization and compartmentalization that suggested possible antisocial personality disorder. The anniversary reflection. On the third anniversary of my wedding day revelation, I sat in the same coffee shop where I'd first met with the literary agent who'd helped me turn my experience into a best-selling book. The Wedding That Wasn't: How I Turned Betrayal into Empowerment had spent 18 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list and been translated into 12 languages. The success had been gratifying, but more important was the feedback from readers who said the book had helped them navigate their own relationship challenges. Some had found the courage to leave unhealthy partnerships. Others had learned to trust their instincts when something felt wrong. Many had simply felt less alone in their own experiences of betrayal and recovery. David joined me at the coffee shop, carrying our 6-month-old daughter, Emma. We'd chosen her name carefully. It meant universal, or whole, representing our hope that she'd grow up in a world where people were more honest with each other and more skilled at detecting deception. "Do you ever regret how public everything became?" David asked, settling Emma in his lap while she gazed around with wide, curious eyes. I considered the question seriously. The attention had been overwhelming at times, and there were moments when I missed the privacy of being unknown. But the positive impact was undeniable. Hundreds of people had been protected from similar scams. Multiple criminals had been caught using techniques learned from my case. Resources for victims had been expanded and improved. "No," I said finally. I think Michael counted on my shame and silence to protect him. By refusing to be ashamed, by choosing to speak loudly instead of suffering quietly, I took away his most powerful weapon. The legacy. As Emma grew, I planned to tell her age-appropriate versions of our story. Not to frighten her or make her distrustful, but to teach her that she should never accept treatment that feels wrong, no matter how well someone else can explain it away. The most important lesson, I'd tell her, isn't that bad people exist. It's that you have the power to protect yourself and others when you trust your instincts and refuse to be silenced. Michael would spend the next 4 years in prison, then face a lifetime of supervised release, registered as a convicted felon, unable to work in his profession, or live the lifestyle he'd stolen from others. His victims, meanwhile, had built new lives, stronger relationships, and advocacy organizations that would protect future generations. The wedding video that was supposed to capture the beginning of a marriage had instead documented the end of a criminal enterprise. Sometimes the most devastating moments in our lives become the catalysts for the most important work we'll ever do. Michael had taught me that some people view relationships as opportunities for exploitation. But Emma would grow up knowing that real love is based on truth, respect, and genuine care for each other's well-being. She'd know that she deserved honesty, that she should trust her instincts, and that she had the strength to stand up for herself and others when necessary. The wedding that wasn't had given birth to something far more valuable than a marriage based on lies. It had created a legacy of truth, strength, and protection that would ripple through generations. In trying to deceive and destroy, Michael had inadvertently created something beautiful and lasting. The network of women he'd victimized had become a force for good in the world, and the child David and I were raising would grow up knowing that truth always wins in the end, even when it takes time and courage to emerge. Perfect revenge, I'd learned, isn't just about consequences for the wrongdoer. It's about transforming the experience into something that makes the world a little bit safer for everyone else.